It's amazing that you can now play 7 different Nintendo game systems across 3 decades on your iPhone or iPad. What makes this even more special is you can now play these games with an emulator available right out of the App Store for your iPhone or iPad with no jailbreaking required. Here's how it's done. For this video, I'm using my 12.9-inch iPad Pro M1, but you can use an iPhone or iPad for this process. First step, go to the App Store on your device. From the list of tabs on the bottom, tap on Search. You'll want to look for an application called Delta Emulator. Tap in the search bar, then when the virtual keyboard appears, type in Delta, D-E-L-T-A. As it's a highly popular application, you'll likely see it autocomplete Delta Emulator. You can tap on that, or if you don't see it, just fill out the word emulator to complete the search. Here's the page for the Delta Emulator. I'll tap on it on the right side of the screen to load it up. It's a free download and has no in-app purchase required. Just tap on the download button, or in this case, since I've already downloaded it, the cloud button, to download the application to your iPhone or iPad. Okay, before you smash that open button, I think it's worth closing out the App Store and any open applications that you're not using in order to free up the RAM on your device before you launch the emulator. To do this, swipe up halfway from the bottom of the screen. You can now swipe up on any open applications that are suspended in order to free up system RAM for the emulator. Okay, if you launch Delta right now, it won't do anything because you don't have any games installed on your device. Let's fix that. To manage your game content, tap on the Files app. If you download your content from an online location, you'll have it saved in a folder called Downloads inside Files. It will likely look something like this. So here are the game files that are saved in this download folder. So I have a variety of them covering the NES, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo DS. 2 games for each. The challenge with storing games in your downloads folder is a lot of things other than games will likely pile up inside your downloads folder and you'll have a hot mess on your hands. They're also stored in the cloud, which means every time you play them, it'll take up a little bit more of your data plan. Let's get these things transferred out of your downloads folder in iCloud and moved over to your device's native storage. Take a look near the top of the Files app window. There's a button here called Select. When you tap on it, you'll have the option to select all. In this case, since everything in here is a game, I'll tap Select All. But you can also tap on individual files if you have things in your downloads folder other than games. Now take a look at the bottom of the window. There's a button down here called Move. Tap on it and you'll be able to move the files out of iCloud onto a folder of your choice on your device. Once you tap on Move, you'll be asked to decide where you want to copy the contents that you just selected. In this case, I want to put them directly on my device. So in the navigation pane on the left side, select either on my iPad or on my iPhone, depending upon the device you're using. There aren't any folders here yet because we haven't created them, but you can actually create a folder before you paste these contents over to keep things organized. In the top of the Move window, there's a folder icon here. Tap on it and you'll be able to add a new folder and rename it if you like. In this case, I'm going to name this folder ROMs, just to make it easy to identify where the game ROMs are stored on the device. Once you create the folder, files will automatically go into it. To paste your game files into the newly created ROMs folder, tap Copy in the top right corner of the Move window, and you'll see that the game files will now be in place inside your ROMs folder. Okay, prepare to have your mind blown here. First of all, the term paste should be used instead of copy, but this works. Also, since you're moving files, you're not going to be in the ROMs folder any longer. It's going to take you back to the Downloads folder in iCloud. I love me some Apple products, but leave it to them to complicate such a simple process. There's no need to have these things stored in duplicate unless you really want them still saved in downloads on your iCloud drive. So for this example, I'm just going to go back up to Select, Select All, and then tap on Delete at the bottom of the screen to clear out the Downloads folder. This will save space on your iCloud drive and help you identify your future downloads when you get them. For now, you're done with the Files application. We'll take a look at some special considerations for Nintendo DS in just a moment. Swipe from the bottom to the center and close out Files in order to free up available RAM on your system. Cool, let's fire up the Delta emulator for the first time. I'm going to swipe through the apps to find Delta and then tap on it to launch it. When it loads for the first time, you'll see on screen absolutely nothing because it doesn't know where to look for your game content yet. Take a look at the top of the app. There's a plus button here. Tap on it and you'll be asked to choose the location where your content is located. In this case, you can choose either iTunes or Files. Well, since you're probably not putting your game files in iTunes, it'll be Files. Tap on Files and you'll be taken to the local storage on your device for the Delta emulator. In this case, neither of these folders is the right place. Tap on the back button in the top left corner of the window. Hey look, there's that ROMs folder you just made. Tap on that folder and you'll see your game files here. These game files can be in either compressed .zip format or in uncompressed format, whichever you prefer. So there's two ways you can import your games. You can select them individually by tapping on them and then scrolling down to tap individual files that you want to import into the emulator. The other way you can do this is if you look in the bottom corner, you can tap on Select All to mark all of the files at one time. Once you've selected the game files that you want to import into the emulator, tap on Done in the top right corner of the import window. Your game content will now be available in the emulator. There's a problem here though. Depending upon how your files are named, it may or may not automatically import the artwork for your games. There's an easy fix for this though. Tap and hold on any game inside the emulator and you'll see a pop-up menu appear. From the list of choices in the pop-up menu, come down to Change Artwork and tap on it. From the list of submenu choices that appear, choose the one that says Game Database by tapping on it. You'll now be presented with a search engine to allow you to search for the art for your game. In this case, it already found the box art in the first listing, so I'll just tap on it here. This is going to add the box art to the game ROM inside the emulator to give it a more polished look. In some cases, you might not find the artwork as one of the first listings for your game content. So here's Super Mario Bros. For the NES. I'm going to choose Games Database again, but in this case, it's not any of the matches shown here. So you have to go into the search bar and manually type in what you're looking for. In this case, since it has that exclamation mark in the ROM name, that's more than likely the thing that is throwing things off. So I'll tap here and then type in Super Mario Bros. To see what we get. No, not Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Bros. Once you have your search query in, you can scroll down through the list of available options. And in this case, I found the box art for the original Super Mario Bros. For the NES right here. So I'll tap on it to add it to the game ROM and improve the overall aesthetic of the emulator. So you've already noticed that some of the file names for these ROMs are kind of jank looking. Here's a way you can fix that. Just like with changing the art, tap and hold on any one of the ROMs to pull up this menu. This time, choose Rename by tapping on it. This pulls up the virtual on-screen keyboard on your device. From here, tap on the name anywhere that you want to start making a change. And the easiest way to go about this is just to go toward the end of the name and just start hitting the backspace key. A lot of times the ROM names are pretty close, but just have extra things added to the end of them. Here, this looks good. Once you have the name set the way you like it, tap Done in the bottom right corner. Now you'll see the name change reflected in the emulator's interface. There are some global settings in the emulator that are worth taking a look at. To access settings, tap the 𝐃𝐈𝐒𝐂𝐋 icon in the top left corner. And boy oh boy is that stuff ever small. Let's zoom in and have a closer look. There, that's better. The first control settings you'll see are for choosing which controller you wish to use from the 1 to 4 player for compatible devices like the Nintendo 64. Next up, you'll have the option to install skins or custom graphic overlays that match the look of some of these systems and their controllers if you turn your device into landscape mode. In landscape mode, you'll see some virtual controls for things like the D-pad and buttons. You can change their opacity here. If you have your device set in silent mode, you can toggle this on to respect silent mode, which means game audio will not play if you have the sound turned off otherwise on your device. You can synchronize games and other settings across multiple versions of Delta across multiple devices. You can turn on haptic touch so when you touch the virtual controls on screen, that it vibrates your device slightly. You can make changes to the emulation cores, but in most cases that won't be necessary. Finally, you'll also have the option to contribute financially to the developers of Delta, which I've done and I recommend, especially since it was a free download and there are no in-app purchases. Once you've reviewed your settings, tap Done in the top right corner to go back to the main menu of the emulator. To launch a game for the first time, tap on the ROM. When you hold your device in portrait mode, it will fill in the bottom of the screen with a virtualized version of the controls for the device you're using, in this case the NES gamepad for Nintendo Entertainment System games. Do you see this little dot right here? Tapping this gives you access to the in-game menu for any game that you're playing inside the emulator. Tap this button at any time and here's what you'll see. There are 5 super useful options here. You can save state at any point during your gameplay to save your progress. You can also go back and load that state at any time when you launch the game. You can add in cheat codes from things like the Game Genie. Hey, you know me, no judgments here. Tapping the fast forward button helps you go through things like extended text dialogues if you want to just skip right to the action. And finally, pressing hold button lets you select a button or series of buttons that you want to have automatically held down on the virtual controls. This helps for things like auto fire. Also, near the center of this menu, you'll have the option to either quit the game and go back to the main menu, or tap resume on the right side to continue your gameplay. Virtual controls are great for when you're on the go, but you can also pair a real gamepad with the emulator. Here's how that's done. First, swipe up from the bottom to the halfway point on screen, then close out the emulator by swiping up on it. From the home screen of your device, scroll through the list of choices until you find the Settings app and then tap on it to launch it. From the navigation pane on the left side, scroll through it until you find the listing for Bluetooth and then tap on it. If you don't already have Bluetooth turned on, be sure to tap on the slide switch to select it to the on mode. For this example, I'm going to be pairing what's called the Ultimate Bluetooth Controller from 8BitDo. It's linked for you in the video description and available at Stone Age Gamer. Among the many things I like about this controller is that it comes with its own dedicated charging dock, and the thumbsticks are Hall effect, which makes this a very reliable controller. It also has the ABXY layout for Nintendo. Press and hold the pairing button on the top of the controller and you'll see the light ring start to fast flash. Back on your device, you'll see a new listing for Pro Controller. This is the 8BitDo Ultimate Bluetooth Controller. Tap on it and the gamepad will now be paired to your device. Swipe from the bottom up to the halfway point on screen and then swipe on Settings to close it out and go back to the home screen. Now you can go back to the Delta emulator and tap on the app icon to relaunch it. What's really awesome with a controller like this is that you don't have to configure a thing inside the emulator. It will automatically recognize that you have a Bluetooth controller connected and use it instead of using the virtual controls. Here's Mike Tyson's Punch-Out on NES. You'll notice that the virtual gamepad on screen is removed and you now have access to only the game on screen, giving you a cleaner interface since you're using a gamepad. As you can see here, I'm easily able to use the Bluetooth controller to control the game just like any virtual on-screen control would have done. Nice! For the next part of this guide, I don't think anyone could set this up better than the man himself.
So, this is what we're up to today, and I'm really glad you liked everything. But there is one more thing.
If you're going to play Nintendo DS games in the emulator, you have to install some BIOS and firmware files into the emulator. Without installing those necessary files, if you tap on a DS game and try to run it, you'll get this message. Here's how to fix that. You'll need 3 files. The first one is called bios7.bin, the second bios9.bin, and the third firmware.bin. It's beyond the scope of the video to discuss where to download them, just be aware that you need them. Back on the emulator, tap on Import Files. This will give you 3 menu choices inside the emulator, one each for installing BIOS 7, BIOS 9, and the firmware file. I left this specific part of my recording in place because I want to show you what happens if you try to put the wrong files in place. It's possible to get files from different sources that don't match the ones that are specifically required for the Delta emulator to run DS games. Here's what happens if you install the wrong file. For example, if you install an incompatible version of BIOS 7, you'll see this message telling you what the expected file is supposed to be. However, when you have the correct compatible BIOS files and firmware file for the Nintendo DS that the emulator requires, select them and input them into each of the 3 slots inside Settings. You'll get a check mark next to each indicating that the correct file has been selected and been recognized by the emulator. Once you have the 2 BIOS and firmware file installed, tap Done in the top right corner. You'll see this new home screen icon appear in the DS tab, and it really doesn't do anything, at least not as far as I could tell in my testing. But you know what this does do? It lets you launch those DS games. Check this out. I'm going to tap Mario Kart here, and sure enough, the game loads up in dual screen mode. Along with the virtual on-screen physical controls, you can even tap on your phone or iPad and use the bottom touch display just like you would on a real Nintendo DS. That is awesome. You know what else is awesome? There are a lot more game systems you can emulate on your iPhone or iPad. And you don't have to jailbreak it to run those either. Check out this video shown on screen and linked in the description and pinned comment to learn how to use your web browser to play your favorite game systems in emulation.